Our next panel is going to talk about exactly that: investments, money, business, the things I know nothing about. It's going to be amazing. So our speakers this time are Edward Kukierman, Chairman and CEO at Catalyst Investors Club and Managing Partner at Catalyst Funds; David Kunin, Investor at Catalyst as well; Hagit Elgov, First Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer and Head of Finance Division at Bank Leumi; Zalman Duchman, and they will be moderated by board member at Catalyst Investors Club, Dana Somberg.
So, hi everyone. We're gonna discuss a very small subject, the Israeli and Jewish economic future. So, hi everyone. Hagit, I want to start with you. Can you give us a high-level overview of the Israeli economy during the war?
Hi, hello everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you. As head of the financial division of the leading and biggest bank in Israel, Leumi, we have a wide perspective on the Israeli economy. Now, hopefully, as the war is ending with the ceasefire in Lebanon, we can look forward to a new horizon. But as you can imagine, the last 14 months were and still are very challenging, but at the same time, very revealing. It exposed the strengths and resilience of the Israeli economy and society. In October 2023, in the beginning of the war, the Israeli economy found itself in a crossroads. We were facing great uncertainty in our society in general, and in the financial markets in particular. Despite the hardships and sorrow of the longest war in our history, the Israeli economy kept moving on. I am proud to say that during the war, we at Leumi granted special benefits to affected customers. We granted exemptions, deferrals of loan repayments, and cuts to fees. We also established a special fund to support the rebuilding and rehabilitation of Kibbutz Be'eri in the south. Let me just highlight three key aspects. Firstly, while Israel was engaged in a bitter war in the north and in the south, cooperation showed amazing agility and adapted to dramatic changes. As we saw in the financial statements of the cooperation in most segments, they showed rapid recovery. Even the small, medium enterprises, which are the heart of the economy, are moving on. Secondly, despite the fact that hundreds of thousands of employees were called on reserve duty, cooperation continued to operate at full capacity and kept delivering. In fact, the employment in Israel has returned to the pre-war level, almost to the pre-war level. And now we see, after 14 months, that the Israeli economy returning to a new normal routine.
That's great. So we
have
yes?
one more. Thirdly, let's look at the high-tech sector, which is a significant growth engine of the Israeli economy. In the last quarter, capital funding rose 30% compared to the parallel quarter last year. In addition, the tech exports of goods and services were stable. In conclusion, the Israeli economy and its people are resilient and determined to move forward even more than usual. So together with you, we can be optimistic about the future.
Yeah, and we can't talk here about economy without discussing the startup nation. We have here Edward Kukierman, who is the managing partner of Catalyst Funds, invested in Mobileye, Arbe, Tufin, and much more, and raised more than 10 billion for the Israeli high-tech. And today you are establishing a new platform, Catalyst Investors Club. Can you elaborate a little bit about it?
Yes, we've been investing for 30 years in the high-tech industry, and we saw since the war started substantial drop in terms of investment in the high tech. It's true that the last quarter we had rebound, but eventually Israeli companies have challenges raising money. The number are that in 2021, the venture industry invested $25 billion in the high-tech sector. In the last 2 years, we are below $9 billion. And in order to facilitate the fundraising efforts of the Israeli high-tech companies, we have created a platform where we have put 300 videos of the leading technology companies. So any person from Jerusalem Post readers, they can just look at the video, short videos, and select the one that they like. Once there is a leading fund that back one of those companies, we invite private investors to co-invest with leading venture funds. I think it's a way for Israeli companies to raise additional funding from accredited investors without having to wait for the international funds to come back to invest in the Israeli market.
Okay, and we have here also the perspective of an investor. David Kunin, you invest in Israeli companies and VCs. What reassures you about Israel investment landscape?
Well, we have as a family about maybe $10 million of investment in various venture funds. I'm curious, though, how many people in the audience have venture investments in Israel? You know, it's been a beautiful day and into an evening of discussion of so many incredible projects. But I think you should understand that investing in Israel is one of the greatest ways to be involved in Israel. There's no reason to be in Silicon Valley and chasing the beautiful returns that you get from the Silicon Valley funds. Israel has as many startups as all of the rest of Europe combined, and it has great funds that have many different platforms, whether it's the ones that we're in that are medical device at the very early stage, or things like Eddie does with the very latest money before profitability. There's so many different platforms. They're great platforms, and it's a way of following your money in a way that hits your heart in a very different way than any other investment you can make. It's a fantastic time to be going in. There may be different strategies in Israel in terms of how they do their exits. They usually exit sooner than the Silicon Valley funds do in terms of making big companies, but I promise you the science is amazing in Israel. You've heard from so many of the different universities. They have so much great, amazing startup ideas, and there's no reason that you shouldn't be thinking about a certain piece of your wealth being guarded and managed and run by Israeli investors. It's a real ecosystem. It's next to Silicon Valley. What makes it an ecosystem is that you have great business managers, you have great science, you have great banking, and you have great venture capital managers like Eddie and the rest of the people, going back all the way to the Yozma funds. When I started, I was doing road shows for those funds and helping them find their American investors, and I've been involved in it for 30 years. And even though the war is going on, there's no time like now to be putting money into Israel. The science is great, and they will eventually find their exits, and there's no way to stop it. It's the best of all the venture arenas in the whole world besides Silicon Valley.
Yes, so Eddie, what kind of investments the JPost audience and readers can find in your platform?
We are focusing on more mature companies. One phenomena which we see is a time to exit from the day the company is established to the exit. On average, it takes 16 years for exit that are above $100 million, and for exit above 200, it takes 18 years. So we have, in the beginning of our venture activity, 30 years ago, we did early stage, but now that it takes so much time to get to the level where you can go public on the NASDAQ, we typically invest in companies that are mature. We have a very diversified portfolio in biotech, cybersecurity, auto tech, and we are trying to select the ones that are really disruptive. And when we invest, we want to make sure we have one criteria to make sure that when we invest, the company has enough cash to turn profitable. So we invite some investors to co-invest with us via our platform and be happy to present any and to discuss any of these opportunities offline. Thank you.
Okay, and we can't discuss business and the Israeli economy without touching a little bit social responsibility. It's Tzedakah. Zalman Duchman, you are the executive director of Kolel Chabad. How do you convince businesses to implement tzedakah and social responsibility in their business plan?
Thank you, Dan. The first thing is I'd like to thank Rabbi Lipsker, Rabbi Zalman Lipsker, for this opportunity to be able to address this question. There is no way to do business without charity, no way to do charity without business. The same way that Israel is a startup nation when it comes to business, it predates Jewish people. We always came up with innovative ways to deal with challenges. In the same way, there's anyone that looks at their portfolio of business has to look at portfolio of the charity the same way. Kol Chabad is the oldest continuously operating charity. We're operating since 1788. So our first real challenge that we faced was in 1812 after the Napoleonic War. Wow. Which the second Chabad Rebbe, which today was his birthday and Yahrzeit, and tonight we celebrate his day, his day that he was released from prison, was faced with a major downturn. And he came up with a new innovation. The innovation was crowdfunding and micro-giving. Before that, we don't have a record of that. Actually, the JNF Pushka box, that's very well recognized, was predated, and the one that came up with this innovation was the Mitter Rebbe of Dov Ber, that today was his birthday, the second Chabad Rebbe. And throughout that, the only way you last so many years, 236 years, is when you change with the times. Today we have the largest platform to help people directly, to give cards for people right into their hands. Right after October 7th, you mentioned Kibbutz Berry. There's a printer in Kibbutz Berry that they print cards. The first job they did after October 7th was printing more cards for us to be able to hand it to them. If anyone's following the Israeli politics today, the High Court in Israel turned over, there was 390 million shekel that was tied up in a court battle. They turned over to Kol Chabad to be able to distribute in the year 2025. So we constantly innovate, and the same way people look for innovation and what's new in business, they have to innovate what's new in charity. And I'll deem my cousin will be very disappointed if I wouldn't mention that the old Pushka box today, we have an app for that. Of course, go to the App Store, search Kol Chabad Pushka. You can download it, and there's an app for that too.
Okay, there's Startup Nation. Okay, so let's move a little bit to 2025 with your permission. Hagit, what are you expecting to be the growth engines?
Okay. So despite the heavy blows we suffered in the attacks against Israel on 7 fronts, Israel's economy has very strong fundamentals beside the high-tech that I also mentioned before, and energy. In addition, we have a number of growth engines that will lead the economic recovery in 2025. Let me highlight 4 positive areas of growth. Firstly, we have one inherent growth engine as a nation. That engine is our natural population growth. In fact, our population growth of 2% per year is several times higher than the OECD average. As it says in our Torah, be fruitful and multiply. And we know how to do it very well. In Hebrew, pruvu. As you know, rapid population growth leads to first, a rise in private consumption, second, a rise in demand for housing, and third, increase in budgets for national infrastructures like energy, transportation, water purification, etc. Secondly, the rebuilding of destruction caused by the war in the north and in the south. These building projects will increase our domestic activity and will energize our industry, commerce, and employment. Thirdly, the growing demand for housing. Many of you will be surprised to learn that in the middle of this year, yes, in the middle of the war, we saw increase in demand for housing in the south, and specifically in the city of Sderot, which suffered from painful blows, both emotionally and physically, in housing and in infrastructure. And yet we see the rush to purchase new apartments there. And finally, we saw a jump in the interest of people to make aliyah from abroad. Many Israelis living abroad also decided to return home at this time. Isn't it strange it's happening now, during our darkest hour? As all these forecasts are realized, and we see, hopefully, the end of the war in the beginning of 2025, I truly believe that 2025 will be the rebound year. We expect the GDP will increase to 4% from 0.6% in 2024. To summarize, in light of my remarks today and following the incoming new administration in the United States, I am more than sure that this is the best time to invest in Israel. I call on everyone here today to consider their own investment possibilities and benefit from the economic recovery starting from the day after, which is hopefully soon. Together with you all, we hope and pray for the return of the hostages as soon as possible. Thank you.
Yeah, let's give an applause to that. And you talked a little bit about investment in Israel. So, David, as an investor in Israel, what is your message to this community? How can you encourage them to invest in Israel much more than they do?
Venture capital is a new financial instrument. It was created in Silicon Valley. I know Tim Draper, his grandfather, is credited with having created it. The Israeli startup economy is for real. It's not, there's a different financial thesis than in Silicon Valley. They make exits a little bit sooner because they probably are merging into companies that are resident here in America and going public. There's $200 billion of Israeli company market cap on the American markets that is the exits from the Israeli startups. But there's nothing about the war that will stop the science from moving forward, from having the ecosystem continue to thrive. And if you can be patient with your money, the success of Silicon Valley and the second place in the world is Israel. There's nothing more lucrative than being involved in Google from the first round, or from Apple in the first round, or from Checkpoint in the first round, or from any number of Mobileye that makes all the cars go beep, beep, beep when they get close to something. It was a roll-up that Eddie and his partner Yair Shamir, the son of the former prime minister, they successfully put it together and sold it to the automobile tier one industry for something like
so I'm
$4
sure
billion.
now
So
everyone here
there's a positive thesis today. They say when there's blood in the streets is when you have to make your investments, and now, of course, the timing is right. You'll get great returns if you choose to.
So I'm sure now everyone are looking for your platform, Catalyst Investors Club, look for their next investment. So let's conclude. What kind of technologies they can find there?
We are currently, for example, just to illustrate the type of technology we look at today, there was, maybe some of you have heard, this laser technology that was used during this conflict, and the Iron Dome integrate this laser technology. As you may know, in order to stop a rocket, the Iron Dome had to spend $100,000 to stop each one of the rockets. With the laser technology, one can do it with a cost of $2.50. And this is where the Israeli disruptive technology is really changing the way we can provide some better and more efficient security system for the country. So we see that there are also technology that have a major impact. We see that when we saw that when we invested in Mobileye, but we see that also in companies like the laser technology that will secure the
Yeah,
borders
so
of Israel.
we don't have time. The music is on. One quick last sentence from you, Zalman, to encourage the audience.
There is a lot of opportunity in Eretz Yisrael, and people should do all they can. And the music's starting.
Yeah.
Everybody have a good evening and a good night. And a
Yeah,
good
and
yontif.
invest in Israel. Thank you, everyone.